So I came up with a name for the podcast, and I also have this like cool little like button here. So I'm just gonna. Are you guys ready for this? Okay, I'm gonna call Josh and see if I can get this rolling. Yo, what's up, dude? Okay, I'm gonna bring you live in just 1 second. Yeah. All right, guys, here we go. I guess we can call this a podcast. I think I'm just gonna call it a podcast. Like at first I was like, oh, it's an interview series, but no. I mean, what is a podcast anyway?
It's official.
Yeah, I think it's official. Yeah, thank you for being our first guest.
Oh, I'm very honored.
Okay. By the way, how's the audio?
Sounds great.
Everything working okay? I'm just checking the chat real quick.
Yep.
Music slightly lower. Oh, him louder. Okay. I knew that this
mic check.
I knew that this might like be kind of an issue, but how about that? Okay, cool. Okay, what's up? Welcome everybody.
Hey everyone, I got the chat in front of me too, so I can see what's going on.
Cool. So first things first, we just put out a song together. I guess.
We sure did.
I mean, well, I guess like it wasn't like a pure collab in that sense, but it was a remix that I did for your new track. Guess I'm Jaded. Do you want to maybe just like kind of tell us about it a little bit?
Sure. Guess I'm Jaded was the last song that I wrote with somebody else pre-quarantine, and it's a band from Los Angeles called Moon Tower. And I don't usually write songs with bands, but I was a big fan of theirs, and I saw them perform at Dance Yourself Clean here in LA. So we got together to write a song, and it was just one of those very natural, quick sessions where something came together really fast. And although it's not exactly sort of album material for me, I really love the song, and so it kind of made perfect sense for us to put it out on Minerva, which was exciting. And after having done that, you were kind enough to jump on the remix train, and
I mean, of course, right?
It's exciting too. Well, it's the second time that we've done remixes for each other. Now I owe you one.
Right. Sorry, 1 second. I'm just like fixing the audio. Looks like we're a little low here.
Goldroom is super quiet.
Okay. Guys, this is the first time doing it. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, Skype is being kind of difficult. How is that, guys?
What's up, chat? Can you guys hear me?
Is that a little bit better?
We'll find out.
Okay, way better. Okay, good. Okay, let me know if it's like too imbalanced, and we'll kind of adjust as we go. Okay, cool. So I was we started this label like what, maybe probably like a year ago. We kind of like got into it. We were like talking about it for like a really long time, and I think one of the real benefits that I was really stoked about was like being able to do these remixes and like release them, kind of have some level of ownership over them, and like I guess like maybe just for context so people understand.
I was going to say, let's get inside baseball on it, because we don't get to talk about that very often, and almost nobody, even like the music industry podcasts and like writers, I've never heard anybody really describe the economics of how remixes work.
Right. Okay, so I mean, like I guess to start, like let's talk about how it used to be done, which for the I guess for a really long time, is, you know, especially when I started in 2007, the only way you could do, like, the way you do a remix is basically you would get the label to pay you like a flat fee, and you would just do the remix and you had no ownership over it. Like you couldn't like you had no real control over it. It just came out whenever they wanted, and that's that. It was almost like a service, right? It was basically work for hire.
I mean, you say used to, 99.5% of remixes are still procured that way.
That's
Labels
true.
hit up producers, or the producers do it for free and a label recognizes it on YouTube and then they want to put it out on Spotify, so they'll contact whoever did it. But 99 times out of 100, they offer a flat fee, and then the remixer gives up all of your rights.
Right.
So if the song gets licensed in a commercial, or if it does 100 million streams, the only thing you'll ever see is that remix fee.
Right.
Which is kind of crazy, because in every other part of the music business, half of the ownership of the song is the songwriting behind it. And from a very pure perspective, if your remixes the way we do them, is we write the entire instrumental,
right,
which is like half of the song.
Right. And
so
to not
remix,
and to not get any ownership over that is kind of weird, right? So there's kind of a stigma around it, where it's just like people don't it's like they don't see they don't see the value in it, or they don't see the songwriting in it, even though, like, I do feel like you are sort of, you know, like you said, like rewriting the entire instrumental. Like clearly that has some value, right?
There's a second problem with it too, which is that if you get paid up front when the remix comes out, I suppose it's in your best interest for the song to do well, but it doesn't really matter whether the song does 500,000 streams or 1 million streams. Like, it doesn't change anything for you. So like people's interests aren't aligned either. Right.
Yeah. Like, are you really going to promote something you have no ownership over? You know, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you'll tweet about it a couple times, but like, if you don't have like skin in the game, it's kind of a weird thing. Like, why would you be promoting it? Especially if it's competing with, like, let's say an original track that you own, or, you know, that you have full control over. I think that'd be kind of weird. So it is true. Like still to this day, most remixes are still done that way. Like in this like sort of flat fee format, and it's I don't know. Like I feel like in a sense I kind of internalized. Like I internalized that stigma for a long time. I was like, oh no, yeah, remixes are lesser than, you know, or like I feel like I didn't take them seriously or something like that. And I think it took me a couple years to really, I don't know, maybe appreciate it, or like the artistry that goes into it, you know. And now my approach has changed completely. Like, where I really, you know, especially while negotiating this kind of thing, I really try to get as much ownership as I can, because I feel like I'm creating something new, you know, even if it is derivative.
Yeah, I mean, and then the second part of that just being, I think, as you go along as a songwriter and you start to understand that having ownership over the songwriting of the songs, when you build your catalog, you can start to see, you know, returns that'll last your whole life on that. And then you realize that you spent all this time working on these remixes that are out in the world and generating income that you don't see any of. I mean, it's easy to say like, oh, what happens if it, you know, does 1 million streams or gets synced in a commercial or whatever, but there's all these little ways that songs earn money. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we want to start a company, right? Is we've been on a journey for the last few years, really getting nitty gritty about learning about where every penny comes from on this stuff. And it's really interesting because, you know, it ties into all the technology stuff that we're interested in. I
like, it is true that, like, if you don't get any ownership, obviously it's implied you basically cut off any potential revenue that song can generate for the rest of your life, basically. So like, you never know when a remix or something like that might pop off in, like, I don't know, 20 years or something like that, and you sort of missing out on a lot of income basically, and it's a bit. I mean, I suppose maybe you could make the counter argument that the labels are, you know, taking some risk, giving you money up front. But the reason why they do that is because they know that over the long term, you know, there's value in owning it. Like, I think they sort of frame it in a way where it's, you know, it's like, I don't know, it's like, oh, well, it's too much of a hassle. It's an accounting nightmare. You know, we don't want to deal with that. It'd just be easier. Let us just pay you, you know. But it's like, okay, why? You know, why are you doing that?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know. It's an interesting. I mean, this is so, you know, sort of to lead into with Minerva. You know, we feel like there's an equitable solution where the label can benefit, and we can give remixers the opportunity to share in the profits. And so, you know, for somebody like you or any artist that has, you know, a following and knows that they can, you know, generate streams, you don't need to worry about getting a fee up front because you have a pretty strong understanding of how well a remix of yours is going to do in the baseline. And so, you know, it's a pretty cool solution because we can go to remixers that have followings but are having trouble finding remixes to do or don't want to do it based on that fee structure, and we can actually tie them into the actual earnings, which is an exciting change, we hope.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so just to be a little more specific about it, like one of the things we've been doing with remixers, which I think is pretty unique in the industry with our label Minerva, is that we've basically been doing like ownership splits with the remixers, which, you know, maybe they don't get like that fee up front or anything like that, but like kind of like everything we were just saying, like you get that long-term ownership and you'll forever own the piece of music that you worked on, you know, like you should, right? Like it's kind of obvious if you really think about it, but the music industry has a way of sort of distorting things, and it's like, well, this is how it's done, you know. And you know, I think everybody's kind of waking up to that and kind of like, no, actually, I should own a piece of this. Like I know that it's like derivative, right? Because you're building off of somebody else's work, but they asked you to. You know, it's not like, you know, it's. Shout out to Metza in the chat.
The other cool thing is because we distribute our music through STEM, and they have a great platform where we're able to account to the people on our label on a monthly basis. And so remixers, for instance, with Guess I'm Jaded, as soon as any royalties come in, they will be split with the remixers on that first month. So from the very first stream, the remixers are getting paid. Whereas with lots of other labels, you are waiting for accounting periods to happen over a long period of time. And
6 to 9 months, maybe, yeah.
And in a lot of cases, remixes are cross-collateralized with the original recordings. So until the original recording is profitable, you might not see any money there either. And in this case, we really want to incentivize, you know, everybody to see things move quickly. So it's pretty exciting to be able to say, you know, hey, come do a remix for this song, and by the way, you know, next month you may see money from it.
Yeah.
That's something that, you know, seems like it should be obvious, but if I told you that was what was possible 5 years ago, you probably would have been like,
right,
wow, you know.
Okay, so like the chat is like freaking out trying to figure out what you're drinking. You want to clue us in? Oh,
this is actually just cold. It's cold brew and almond milk. I saw somebody say chai. It's not chai. I also love chai, but this is just cold brew. I had a long day in the studio, and I wanted some coffee.
Yeah. What are you working on right now?
Well, actually, I started working on a remix for somebody else, and I sort of feel like it's not going to end up happening. So I don't want to like say who
right.
or say more than that. But I started working on a remix today, which was fun because I haven't done a remix in a few months. And so it was fun to just play around a little bit. Sometimes, do you ever have situations, I mean, I don't know, maybe you don't. There are lots of situations where I'm willing to do a little bit of a remix on spec just to see how things go. And then I'll go back after a session and I'll be like, this is going really well. Let's do a deal for this. That happens to me all the time because I'm really picky about what kind of vocals I work with.
Yeah.
So this is an example of my manager being like, hey, I've got some vocals. These people are interested in a remix. I've got the stems. Do you want them? And I say yes. And then I, go at it for one session and then go from there. Mm-hmm. So it was fun just to kind of mess around.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't... Yeah, like, I mean, I've had a couple times where I'm like, this just isn't working, sorry guys, and then I just don't, usually you don't get money up front, just whatever, so it's like, it's just fine, it's like, hey guys, we tried, this isn't working, sorry for the hassle, but for the most part, I try to make it work. I did one project, comes to mind recently, where I did, I forget what the label was, but they reached out about doing some choral remixes, and it was such an oddball project that I was like, how am I gonna do this? But I just kind of took it as a challenge, almost like not really knowing how I was gonna do it, and it ended up actually being quite rewarding. I mean, it was hard, like it was a lot of work to like sort of remix like choral music is tricky because the timing. There's a whole lot of technical reasons why it's difficult. Like there's no separation.
Yeah, there's no click. Like how are you going to warp that properly? Did you just end up like chopping it into samples Basically. That are of the right length and working from there?
Well, really, what I did was like I used it more as sampling material and really went in a totally different direction and just used it as like texture basically. But that was like. Yeah, like in my head, I was like, "Oh no, I'll do what you said. Like I'll warp it, I'll move it into places, or move it around and try to build something underneath." But that just wasn't working. Like choral music just doesn't have that metering that you need for any kind of like remixing or grid-based music, Okay, so like I wanted to take take this time to sort of like talk about maybe some earlier stuff because. Especially in the chat, like a lot of times you get a lot of people that are like, I'm a new artist. Like, how do I start? What do I do? And I think it'd be like a really cool opportunity to sort of really dig into your story and like really where you started and like that path, like kind of along the way, and kind of dwell on that for a second. So I guess maybe just we're not going to go to the beginning of time, but like let's maybe like as a kid, like were you into music or like what was your first interaction with music?
So my parents were not very into music. Well, I mean, I don't know. They would probably tell you that they were, but I don't feel like I was one of those kids that grew up around, a stereo on every night or one of my parents playing the piano or something like that. Some of my earliest memories of music are being very obsessed with songs. My parents had a stereo, and I think we had cassettes. It was definitely pre-CD. And I have vivid memories of listening to We Didn't Start the Fire over and over again, and I have vivid memories of listening to Surfin' USA. Nice. This is probably when I'm like 4. And just listening and rewinding and then listening and rewinding and listening and rewinding and doing that. So I know that I really was pretty obsessive about music from an early age, but not to the point where I was taking lessons really young or something like that. When I got to elementary school, it was the classic situation where some company comes in with a bunch of instruments and gets you to start to take lessons or whatever, and I was really interested in the cello.
Oh, cool.
Which I ended up playing the cello for 8 years.
I actually I had no idea. I didn't know you played. Yeah. That's awesome.
That's how I started. It's a huge regret in my life that I don't own a cello or play regularly. I mean, I stopped a long time ago, and I've wanted to pick it back up for so long. I love that instrument.
Do you think you could pick it up and like be able to play still?
Yes, I do. Every time I've picked a cello up, I've been able to make it sound okay. The concept of like being able to pick up a sheet of music and play it well or be dexterous, I think no. But at least as far as like form and making something sound okay. Like if I needed to play on a track or something like that, I could get something that sounded okay out of it.
Just tune it a little bit, yeah. Adjust it slightly, yeah.
But I never practiced enough, and I was always writing my own things, and just because I wanted to, I don't know. At some point, I got really not at some point. The first 2 CDs I ever bought were Nirvana's Nevermind and Pearl Jam 10.
Nice.
And those were the first. It was I don't know what year it was.
Something.
But I got
90
so
something.
into that, and I was so interested in playing guitar immediately that my parents recognized that, got me a Squier Strat, and I started to play constantly to the point where my parents realized that cello wasn't going to happen anymore, and so they started to get me guitar lessons. So I was able to start playing guitar then, and my teacher was great because he would always let me, half of the lesson would be Suzuki method, learn it properly. The other half of the lesson would be I get to bring a song in and he would teach me. So I would learn, I feel like 10 out of 10 songs would just be power chords.
Right, of course.
Because I was just bringing in all sorts of like Offspring and stuff
Offspring
like that.
and Green Day, like stuff like that, yeah.
Totally. But I was really interested in that, and it's all I wanted to play was popular music. And so I think I was pretty interested in songwriting like pretty early on. And the real moment that I think started to change everything for me was that my cousin gave me a 4-track when I was like 13.
Oh, nice.
And so he gave me a Tascam 4-track, and I started to, because I had this thing, all of a sudden I wanted to record something, so I started to write songs. And that got me really interested because I would learn a new chord that I thought was cool, so I'd write a progression around it, and then I would try and build on it with this interface, the Tascam 4-track. And so without knowing that I was sort of producing, it's the beginning of learning how to produce, right? You're stacking stuff on top of each other and bouncing them down and doing it all over again.
I love that, when that light bulb moment, like when you're like, oh, I can like, you can, just stacking things, like record, like a basic chord progression and then do a solo on top. And it sounds so obvious and simple now, but at the time, like, if you didn't have a computer, if you didn't have anything, like that was like kind of a mind-blowing thing. Because like,
it's pretty mind-blowing.
Because like, if you think about it, like back then, if you wanted to play music, you had to play with other people, and you're like, you wouldn't really have that much time to experiment by yourself and really develop your own ideas. You could maybe become like a good guitar player, and that's great. I mean, a lot of the early bands like kind of developed that way, but once you added that recording aspect of being able to layer things, I mean, even as primitive as a 4-track, but you could start to see how powerful that can be.
And so so I just tried to get better at that. And so I was writing songs and recording them for, honestly, that was the next 10 years of my life, from the time I was 13 to the time I was 23. And, I graduated at some point to recording into a DAW, although Sonar maybe.
Oh, cool.
I don't know. I have trouble remembering what I was using before Logic. But once I was in college, I had some friends that were in the music industry program at USC. So I grew up in Boston and then moved to Los Angeles to go to USC, not to study music. I had always written music on my own, or, I was just sort of just an acoustic singer-songwriter. I never played my music for anyone. I never performed anywhere. I was sort of in one band, and but we never played any shows. And so when I got to college, though, I made a bunch of friends that were in the music industry program at USC, and they all got free copies of Logic. And so somebody gave me one of those, and that was kind of a much bigger step because that was the first DAW that had MIDI.
Right.
And so I became more interested in electronic sounds because all of a sudden I had keyboards that I could incorporate into the music, which made me more receptive to electronic music that I was hearing out in the world. which then made me more interested in making electronic music. And that was like a very slow trickle down the hill to actually making electronic music.
Right. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people and a lot of our friends, like, it's not like they started in electronic music. A lot of people come from like band background or like singer-songwriter background, and then it was like, oh, you mean I don't need all these other people? Like, let me, I can do all of this by myself.
Yeah, and for me, like Postal Service and Air and Daft Punk were really like the three big game changers for me as far as, I mean, Daft Punk was like, obviously just they made dance music. But certainly the other two, I like recognized all these things that I loved about songwriting and rock music. They just happened to use an electronic texture around it. So it was like a very easy gateway drug.
Yeah, Daft Punk is interesting because like still to this day, like however they like, it's pretty impressive what they made with, you know, the year, or like, I think what was that, like 97, that first album came out or something? Maybe even earlier.
Yes.
Like 94, maybe.
I mean,
anyway.
Yeah, I think Homework was like mid 90s and Discovery was
2000,
late 90s or early 2000s.
I think Discovery was 2001 because yeah, but still, I mean, that era, you know, pretty primitive in terms of DAWs and like it's kind of incredible what they did. Like, did it sound so good and so modern even to this day, right? Like, it's like even to this day people are trying to replicate it to a point where I really don't think even they have you know, been able to you know, bring that back, at least in my opinion. Like, I mean, I love Daft Punk, but like those albums, maybe just because I grew up with them, but they're like so special, and sonically they just don't seem like they live up to that, you know. I don't know, so it's pretty fascinating. Okay, so I'm kind of curious about the band situation. So you never like, did you play guitar and sing, or like were you a guitar player? Like,
yeah, so I was playing guitar and singing and just writing these songs, and I think in super typical form, at least the way, like you described, sort of the way bands used to form. I was at like a party when I was 16 or 17, and I'm not the guy that picks up the guitar at the party, so like that's not where this story's going. I wasn't like playing Wonderwall for the girls. But a friend of mine was just he played bass in a bunch of punk bands, and I just brought up the fact that I played guitar. And so we got together one night and I just played him a few of my songs, and he just wrote bass lines for them. And then we did that for 4 or 5 songs. And then I was like, you know, I've got this 4-track, like you should record, let's record your bass lines. And then we finished that, and it was sort of like, oh, we just made an EP. Like, I guess we're a band. And so we just kept recording and writing together, but never played any shows. And then my cousin played drums on a few of the tracks, and so that was kind of the only band I was really in until Nightwaves, which is the band that preceded Goldroom.
I'm just curious thing, like, so did you record the tracks and then add drums after, or what, or did you kind of re-record everything?
No, actually, the way that we did it was I recorded my acoustic guitar with a click track in my ear, like using a metronome. Yeah. And so I recorded an acoustic guitar to a metronome, and then the second thing that got recorded was like 2 overhead mics of a drum kit in an untreated room with him trying to play along to my acoustic guitar.
Right. Yeah. No, that sounds like sounds pretty difficult. that was
those recordings are real trash.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was actually something that I kind of learned early on, is like, get the drums down first. Always get the beat down, at least as a basic thing, and then like try to sort of, you know, add it later. Because every time I try to add drums after the fact, it's like, it just doesn't feel right. Like, I don't know.
No, yeah, I mean, it didn't. I wish I could even sort of remember what my reasoning was. I mean, I was definitely like driving the car, so that was my choice. I think just because I had time and I like had a week before he was going to show up to record or something. So it was like, I want to get it done. I don't know. That was I was proud of those songs, and we made some CDs or whatever to give to people. But it was such a hobby.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, something I was pretty passionate about, but I think I thought that it wasn't very good.
Right.
So
you were like aware. You were like, okay, this is cool, but like, yeah. No, that's awesome. I'm just because I'm always fascinated by like these early bands, you know, because like everybody kind of goes through this at some point, and you're like you're kind of proud of it at the time, but like you don't really know where it's going. And
I designed the cover.
Yeah.
We printed it. You know,
is it CD Baby or like something like that?
I can't remember what site we used, but I definitely we purchased like 100 CDs that I uploaded the WAV files, which probably took like a day. Right. And they printed the CDs for us that included like label. Maybe I made the labels. I can't remember. I think
what are those printable ones?
Labels
yeah. Like yes. Oh my God. Yeah. I remember that.
And we made a bunch of those. So I still have them. The band's name was 3 Sheets, by the way, which is hilarious to me. And yeah, we never really did anything with it, and things kind of sat around, and it's been, you know, a joke among friends kind of for all that time. I mean, that's not to say I wasn't proud of the songs. I was really proud of the songs. I just thought we sucked.
I mean, it's like it's impossible to think that you're just gonna like from the start be like, you know, at the highest level. Like it's just, I feel like it's always a progression, right? You're always hopefully improving and improving your skills. I mean, it's just that's a pretty reasonable expectation.
I had zero aspirations for making it a career. Mm-hmm. I just didn't think it was a possibility.
Right.
Like, you know, if somebody had said like, if you work hard at this, you could turn this into a career, I think I would have felt very differently. But literally nobody ever said that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, especially when you think about like the odds. I mean, the odds of being a professional musician, let alone like an artist or like, you know, just working in the music industry in general is like it's so unlikely, unfortunately.
Weirdly, I think it worked to my benefit though, because what I did was I spent a decade not even being concerned about whether or not people liked the music or whether I could get a record deal or whether I had any fans or made any money or anything like that. I really spent a decade just being like, I'm doing this just because I really like doing it.
Right.
And by the end of that, I wasn't so bad at making stuff that sounded okay. And so I wasn't beaten down for a decade. Like I think a lot of people are beaten down for a long time because the first 50 songs you make usually suck.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then that sort of leads into Nightwaves. Like, so how old were you with Nightwaves, or like where does that fit into the timeline?
This was just after college, so late 2000s, and basically what happened was I finished at USC, and I was doing research with one of my professors, and a friend of mine who had been in the music industry program was going to start a record label, and we had just really bonded over music and talked about starting a business together, and he was one of my best friends, and just straight up said, he knew that I was kind of unhappy with what I was doing, and was like, hey, let's start this record label, like do this with me. And so I said yes, and I dove in, and that was sort of the big moment for me. I think that opened everything up. So we this was in blogging days, so we started a blog called the Binary Blog, which was on the Hype Machine.
Oh yeah. And
I ran that and loved doing that. It was kind of my introduction to the music industry, and we signed a few acts. And one of the things that happened was as we were falling in love with electronic music, my business partner Kyle and we started this band called Nightwaves, which is kind of a new wave, you know, blog house sort of band. And that was the first time in my life when music that I had worked on was sort of put out into the world to see what would happen. And I still remember like jumping around our little office when Big Stereo wrote about us.
Oh yeah, Big Stereo. Yeah, that's crazy. There's so many names. Like I met somebody recently. I was in London of all places, and I met one of the guys from Salacious Sounds. Do you remember that one too? Yeah. I met him, and he was like, wait, you look familiar. I was like we were like just kind of like figuring it out, and he was like, and I told him, I was like, yeah, I'm a musician and I have this project RAC, and he was like, oh wait, like blog stuff, and it's like, yeah, and he's like, Salacious Sounds, like, oh my god, this is wild, like
that's crazy. We played a show with the band in Portland, not Portland,
right.
Oregon, Portland, Maine.
Wow, of all places, yeah.
And we played this little show, and it was sort of one of those in between nights on tour. So they like slotted us into Portland, Maine, and there were probably 75 people at the show or whatever.
Hey, not bad for Portland, Maine, honestly. Like,
Travis Haynen, I think is his name. The guy who ran Big Stereo lives in Portland, Maine, and came to the show. And so we had this long chat about proper late 2000s blogs, which was fun.
Yeah, no, I love that. That whole era is like still. I'm pretty nostalgic for it, I guess, at this point, because it has been a while, and it was, I think, for you and I, like, that was like a pretty important period of, like, I think that's where we sort of first, people started to notice, I guess. Like my experience with Hype Machine was like, I feel like I sort of got in with the blog scene a little bit early before Hype Machine, so. Like Neon Gold, like Derek from Neon Gold, he had this blog called Good Weather for Airstrikes. It's just like kind of funny.
It's so bloggy.
Yeah, and but he was the first person to ever talk about my work ever. So like, it's really fascinating that he ended up starting Neon Gold and signed Passion Pit, and like the rest is history, like all these like crazy acts like Marine and the Diamonds, like all the, like he became like a pretty well-known sort of important person in the music industry, and anyway, it's just like kind of funny that like that was like just like it took like one thing, and it just sort of like kind of permeated throughout the years, but
yeah, I mean, for context, I think it's important for people to understand too that we're talking about pre-SoundCloud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is MP3s.
So it was a crazy time when, if you wanted somebody to write about your music, which was kind of the only way to get exposed to new fans, you had to give them an MP3, and then they would take that MP3 and just post it on the blog for anyone to download.
And things would get taken down all the time, right? Like SoundCloud was originally like a tool, like you could kind of it was a hosting tool, really.
Which was great, because for a lot of blogs, we even ran into this problem at Binary, that when we were doing well, the bandwidth was starting to cost us too much money. And I remember, do you remember the blog Missing Tooth?
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
So that guy had to shut his blog down because it became, I think, like the sort of like #1 electro blog, when like, anyway, it was costing him so much to host the MP3s because he was overrunning his bandwidth because so many people were downloading them, that the blog was literally not financially viable. The ad revenue that he could make off of traffic was less than the cost of just hosting the site.
Yeah.
so yeah, there came a point when SoundCloud just became like, oh, thank God, this is where we can just host everything. And I don't think people realized, I mean, I certainly didn't at first. I was like, cool, this is a place where we can host it. It never occurred to me that people could follow me on there, and that those followers on SoundCloud would be a valuable thing.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't like, it was an audio platform first, actually, which is interesting.
That's what I thought of it as too. It was like, oh, cool, this is a way to embed music on my website.
Right, and you don't have to host it. It was like solving that problem at first. Ryland's in the chat, and he mentioned too many Sebastians. That's another one, and JL Audio is also in here. I remember that blog as well. There's like that whole era was like so fascinating.
And yes, it was Missing Tooth with TOOF. So many good blogs.
But like I remember, like I really do remember the sort of like Missing Tooth premiere was like a big deal. Okay, so like in 2008, like one of my big breaks was that I did this mixtape thing with Stereo Gum, and Stereo Gum was like the big one. That was like who you wanted to be with.
They still lasted.
Yeah. Stereo Gum's amazing. But like there was like Pitchfork, and then there was like Stereo Gum, and I think Stereo Gum was a lot cooler at the time. But anyway, it was just like it was. like that really helped sort of solidify me, I guess, at the time. Did you have any kind of like notable like blog post? I mean, you mentioned Big Stereo, but like any other like notable?
I mean, I do remember like Disco Dust was really important to me. The guy Alex who ran that site, I just thought had like the coolest taste, and that blog introduced me to synthwave, basically. Although it wasn't called synthwave at the time, the Valerie Collective.
Oh my God, yeah,
from
Anorak and
France.
Yeah.
Anorak in college. Anorak, who's still a very good friend of mine. So at Binary, we were a blog. We managed a couple acts. We were releasing music as a record label, and we threw shows. So we threw shows at the Echoplex in LA and at the Dragonfly. And we were bringing international artists to LA for their first shows. We were really trying to make a splash any way that we could, and we never really did in any way, even though we tried all these different things. Like we brought the 12s, who were a real blog, like Carl's Hipster Runoff's favorite bloghouse duo, the 12s. We brought them to LA for their first show. We brought Miami Horror to LA for their first show. We brought the Bag Raiders to LA for their first show. The Bag Raiders played Shooting Stars in LA for the first time for like 12 people at this little bar that we booked them at.
It's so funny because that song is like, I mean, that song is sort of, it's a meme at this point. Like,
it's one way or another, it's iconic for a lot of reasons.
It's a great song. It's yeah, but that's crazy. I actually didn't know about like the show stuff that you did. That's wild. With like,
we brought our biggest one was bringing Anorak in college, and Anorak in college came from France, and they did a little bit of a tour, but we did the LA date, and it was really special, and it was really cool getting to connect in person with a lot of these people who we looked up to. And I think a lot of those conversations led us to believing that the art that we were making might find an audience internationally, which I think is something that sounds very obvious in 2020 with the way the internet works now. But this idea that you could get just as many fans in Australia as you could in the United States seemed incredibly far-fetched, but all of a sudden it became more clear that that was possible. So there was like, even though nobody was making any money and SoundCloud certainly wasn't generating anything, there was this path to fans that didn't seem possible before.
You could tour, right? Like, I mean, yeah.
If you reached a certain level of popularity, which like none of the acts that I was working with ever did.
Yeah.
So basically we got known a little bit in LA just because we were throwing these parties. And so I became friends with local promoters, and I knew some acts because of the blog. And so we were sort of known as unsuccessful, like electronic music guys around town. And this was before, this was like just when Justice was happening. And so people were really into Ed Banger, and, people liked the music we were making as Nightwaves enough to ask us to DJ. And so I had to learn how to DJ. And so that's when I downloaded Ableton. And I started playing around with Live just to learn how to DJ using that software, which I had a lot of fun with. And I started to fall in love with DJing because of that, because we'd get asked to DJ around, and I'd play a little bit of it. Everyone else was playing Ed Banger stuff, and I would play like this kind of mellower, slower disco influence stuff, and then all I wanted to do was find a way to DJ on my own more, which is actually sort of how the beginning of the ideas of Goldroom started.
Yeah.
I don't know. Our process was funny though with Nightwaves. You were just asking or mentioning how early bands are interesting. Nightwaves was that way, and the way that it worked was like Kyle, my business partner, well, the other half of Nightwaves, he would like make an 8-bar loop, and he would just get stuck at an 8-bar loop in Logic. So it would be like this electronic thing that he'd put together, and it would have like 30 layers. Just putting so much stuff on it, and it would sound really cool. And I'd just be across the room, and he'd be like unmuting stuff and bringing stuff. I mean, not unlike your stream.
Right.
And so he'd just like play this 8-bar loop for like half an hour. I'd hear all these melodies in my head. And then eventually one day I was just like, can I have that? and I wanted to like surprise him with a song, so I wrote over it and arranged it and then played it for him the next day, and he actually really liked it. So then he re-sang what I had, and then all of a sudden it was a song.
Right.
So we were like, oh, we should do this. And that was our process pretty often, was that he would lay the groundwork, and then I would arrange and write, and then he would sing over that, and that would be a song, which feels...
Yeah, I mean...
That feels more like we have instruments,
right.
you know, more than a lot of electronic stuff that happens
I feel like that's the dynamic with a lot of duos, you know. It's like there's one... you sort of complement each other, right? There's somebody that has just like a ton of ideas but doesn't understand arranging. And then you have another person that maybe, I don't know, like I'm sort of simplifying, but like maybe arranging is like their big skill, or they can like build like an interesting track around like a whole bunch of ideas and sort of be able to distill what's important in that song into like something that's actually tangible, versus just like
the Soul Wax guys talk about that.
I remember in that documentary where Tiga's like talking about both of them. Yeah.
One guy's the faucet and the other's the like funnel.
Yeah.
Kyle was very much the
I actually think the analogy is
then I would
sausage and cutting the sausage.
Oh yeah, you're right, it is.
Shout out to what's that, Part of the Weekend Never Dies, amazing documentary about Soul Wax in like 2008 2009. I feel like I've watched that probably like 15 times now in my life. Like it's so good. It captures it. Honestly, it's kind of like what I wish that Justice documentary was. I don't know if you remember that, but
the Justice one just was like, we're rock stars,
we're partying all the time,
awesome.
You know. And then Soul Wax is like, no, this is awesome. Like this is something to aspire to, you know.
I mean, they were the level that they were able to like sequence their live shows. I can't remember if they were using live at that point, but they described some of how they had their live setup and how much the different machines were connected with each other and actually running off the same clocks.
Yeah.
And that concept to me, whenever that doc came out, I was like, that was the most mind-blowing thing ever, that was possible.
I think they were using Ableton, but it was probably like not nearly as easy as it is today. Like like if you're dealing with analog equipment, yeah, it can quickly turn into a nightmare. Yeah, with clocks and
those
like
guys
all that
are
stuff.
Complete legends. I guess you asked this question like a long time ago, but if there was like a moment where something good happened, and there wasn't, I think Disco Dust doing sort of a feature on us where he asked us some questions was like a moment where people started to pay a little bit more attention, and we got to go down to South by Southwest to play a couple shows. So that was like our big break or whatever. And of course it was South by, so nobody was there. Nobody was at
of course
the 2 p.m. show that
yeah,
we played
the South by Southwest scam. Yeah.
Did you ever play the Lose Control parties?
Yeah, that sounds super familiar. Probably. Yeah. I mean, I remember I remember the first time, South by, I'm kind of joking calling it the scam, but like it is sold to people as this like, go there and you'll be discovered by the industry, and that is not the case at all. In fact, you're going to be competing with like 1,200 metal bands, like all playing at the same time. So it's like not really that great. But I like.
Yeah, there's one specific act that's worth going to South. Like, if you are already being fawned over by record labels, but you have not signed a record deal yet, and you're really good at playing live, go to South by.
Right.
But like, if you're not in that specific subset, it's probably not worth it.
Also,
unless you're getting paid.
I mean, they pay you $250 per band. So like, if you, and by the way, here's the thing: is like if you get accepted into South by, yes, they pay you $250. They give you one badge. So like basically, if you're a 4-person band, you have to share one badge. So you have to take turns going into things. Like you can't you can't go into anything as a band. You have to go. Like it's just one.
And for many years, you were not allowed to play other shows.
Yeah.
So you got to showcase yourself one time.
I forgot about that. That's true.
And then you couldn't play unofficial shows. And there was always rumors every year that if you did, they would like ban you from South by forever and all this stuff.
I forgot about that. It's so true. Yeah, there was like some really like negative stuff about like don't play the unofficial showcases, only do the official stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So
my decision for that was to never be an official artist.
right.
And I might have been an official artist like a few years ago once, like after Goldroom had already like become a bit of a thing. But in the beginning when we went, like we purposefully never applied.
Right. So I did the first time I played South by, I got accepted with the Pragmatic, which is like my other band with Carl, and like we were like all stoked, you know. It was kind of that thing. It's like, we're going to South by, yes, this is our big break. We're gonna, you know, meet all these industry people, and we're gonna do it. And then we got there and realized, like, oh no, this is very different. Played one showcase.
Yeah, but it's still great.
Yeah, no, it was a fun experience. Don't get me wrong, but like the show itself didn't lead to anything. Like nothing happened.
No, so you just end up like drinking 15,000 Lone Stars. And
yeah, I just drank the whole time.
Days, like,
I mean, at least they give you free alcohol, right? That was one thing, but like, yeah. Anyway, it's just like kind of funny to think about South by. I kind of stopped thinking about South by, I guess, for the past couple of years, because I went almost 10 years in a row, and then I just kind of got over it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think one of the last times that I was there was I posted a picture on Instagram today of you and Carl and I at that.
That was fun though. Those are fun, but like the early stuff was just kind of like, okay, yeah.
If you're going there for a purpose and you're like, this is something that's going to improve my career, it's a problem. But if you're going there because it's a good party and somebody's asked you to come play, that's fine.
Like I remember. One of the first times I played, we did 12 shows in 6 days. I was just dead.
Yeah.
I was like
so bad.
And yeah, it was quite hectic. And
were you playing live?
No.
Did you have a sound guy?
This was actually DJing. But live stuff we did. No, live stuff by then things were bigger, so I only did like a couple live shows there.
Yeah.
I played the Hype Hotel. Speaking of Hype Machine. That was cool.
In 2013, I got talked into going with the band, and we had just launched the live band, and so we went down and played 10 shows in 4 days. And at that point, I was trying to not lose money, so I didn't have a tour manager. There was no sound guy. I did everything, and there was a drummer and Mariki, my singer.
Oh, I saw you play there. Yeah.
I had to do the double duty. Like it was double bad because, you know, obviously most bands, they aren't traveling with a sound guy or whatever. And so we had to deal with that. So I was dealing with the house sound people for 4 straight days where you do not get sound check, right? You're like line checking. And then this is in 2013. So I'm like, just please turn the backing tracks up more.
Yeah.
And they're like, sure. And by that, they mean like it's going to be like 30% of the volume. And I want it to be like 85% of the volume.
I hope that people know this. This is like a problem. Like, what is it with sound guys and synths? Like, they just don't turn them up. Like, it's like, I feel like there's like this stigma around like, you should be a band. You know, you can't play tracks. You know, it's like, dude, cut your ponytail, man. Like let's. You know,
with Night Waves, we used to get laughed at in the late 2000s, especially when we went to venues like the Satellite in LA, like formerly Spaceland.
Right.
Like we'd go there, and the house guys would be like, "Are you gonna take your computer off the stage at some point?" Because we didn't even have hardware synths. Right? We had M Audio 61 key MIDI keyboards that were plugged into our computers, and we were just running soft synths.
Yeah.
And so they'd be like, what are you? We didn't have a drummer at that point either. We were playing as a duo. So we'd just go up and it was like 2 keyboards and 2 laptops. And people were just like, what are you guys doing? And we literally got laughed at.
Yeah.
Which was, I don't know, probably a good experience.
Yeah. No, it's all part of the process, right? But like looking back on it, it's like, why were people so weird about like tracks or a computer on stage? It's like a tool like anything else. It's like there was still this like idea that a guitar somehow is like more musical.
People definitely get it now, you know.
Right.
I feel like it'd be pretty weird for a sound guy to not understand that everybody runs tracks now.
Right. Yeah. No, at this point, yeah, it's pretty common. They're actually like, you know, they're ready with the DIs, like ready to go. Like before that, they're like, what do we do with this? You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like even singer-songwriter types that I feel like 15 years ago would have laughed at a computer. Like Tim Atlas, who I love and is a friend and opened for us on this last tour. He's very much just like I think of him as being like sort of a singer-songwriter, you know, guitar and vocals, confessional type stuff. And like, he came up with all these electronics on stage and had tracks and like all this other stuff. I feel like it's just complete commonplace now.
Yeah. Like now it's not a big deal, but a lot of this conversation sort of reminded me of things that I had sort of put behind me and stopped thinking about, because we're like, okay, we're past that. But it really we kind of dealt with like all kinds of ridiculous stuff, like being
I gotta say,
electronic.
Like looking back at like the blog era and early SoundCloud times, you know, this is why. And we could go into a long chat about, I mean, you called the only way to get rich on Spotify is to have a podcast. Is that what the thing said?
I kind of forget now. It's the only way to get paid by Spotify is to start a podcast.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm going to keep that, but it's kind of funny to me. But yeah.
I like it. Like, we are in such a better place as an industry than we were 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep pushing forward, but all of these artists that are making some money, but not as much money as they'd like to make, if they had existed in 2008, they would have been making zero money.
Well, it's funny to me because, like, you know, even my first album, like, it came out in 2014. You know, major label album, like the focus then was iTunes. It's like MP3 sales is the focus. Like, we want MP3 sales. And Spotify was just like an afterthought. So it was like, it's kind of funny thinking about that now, because MP3s are just not even a conversation, you know.
No, my last album, I don't remember hearing one discussion or one comment ever made about the number of downloads that we got.
It's like, if you get it, cool. Nah, whatever. I had an experience recently, which I put out that cover with Matthew Coleman and Hilary Duff, and like her fan base really rallied behind it, and they bought a lot of MP3s on iTunes to get it up the charts, and I think they got it up pretty high. But it was like it felt kind of like the last hurrah for that, you know. It's like it's just not a part of like the typical music industry anymore, you know. I don't know.
It's like people bundling concert tickets or merch with like an album download to like boost their chart position.
Right.
It does feel like so different.
Well, I mean, back to your point about like touring and all of that stuff, like there was this idea early on, you know, pre Hype Machine, whatever, where like what you do to build a band is you build a local audience, you build your following locally, and then you expand to the general area, and then maybe you get on you sign to a label and they pay for you to tour the US, and then you expand from there. It was always about live touring and expanding your fan base that way. But it's so obvious in hindsight, but the internet was just like, no, actually you can build an audience online and probably have reach a much more meaningful number of people. Not to say that it's the same experience as seeing a live show, that's not what I'm saying, but like in terms of just getting people to listen to your recorded music, it's like completely different.
My first show, and I never thought about that. You know, when I launched Goldroom, it was because I wrote a bunch of songs for Nightwaves that were a little bit more dance inclined than what we had done before, and the rest of the band wasn't into it. And so I had these songs that I really liked, and they were just sitting around. And I was interested in DJing around LA more, so I launched this project, Goldroom. My whole goal was like, I hope I get to DJ at the Standard rooftop a few times this summer.
Right.
That would be cool. And I certainly like pushed it hard. I wanted blogs to cover it and stuff like that. But within like 4 or 5 months of launching, I got an email from a guy in Toronto that was like, we want to fly you to Toronto and Montreal for a weekend of shows, and we're going to pay you. And I was like, I don't have an agent. I don't have a manager. I'm my own manager. And that was wild to me. And it was like, well, that was cool. My first real paying gigs were
international,
in a different country. Exactly.
World tour.
But it opened my eyes really quick. You know, I think within a year I'd been to South America and Asia. And so having that kind of understanding of where your music can go, I think changes the whole way that you operate. You know, even, I don't want to say from the writing process, but like everything, the whole way that you choose to present yourself. I think if you know, are having an understanding that like this could reach people all around the world. Yeah.
Like my first show, my first show as RAC was actually in Brazil, of all places. It was kind of a similar situation where it was like, awesome. I actually haven't been back since, so it's kind of funny. But like I remember, same thing. I didn't have an agent. I wasn't managed. And you know, I had done a bunch of remixes by then, so like I had a little bit of notoriety. I had a couple successes, but you know, I just got this email from this guy. And it was like, hey, we want to bring you down to play São Paulo and in Rio. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, how much does it cost? It's like, I don't know, pay for my flights and $1,000. I don't know. It's like, and he's like, okay, all right. So, and I did it. I went there with Carl, and like we.
And you're like, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened.
Yeah. Oh, so
and you just hope.
I forget her. Love Fox from CSS was at the show of all, like, so like.
Oh, like, so cool.
Like kind of just like randomly, and yeah, it was just kind of like this really insane experience, and it was my first time really traveling kind of solo like that, and yeah, that was sort of the beginning of that. But it's like the internet came first, and then the shows happened. It wasn't the other way around. Like I wasn't playing locally, you know.
Right, totally. I mean, nobody took me seriously locally. Like if they were doing a pool party, they knew that I would like play the right vibe, because I would like play Aeroplane remixes, right. Classics and stuff like that.
The yacht classics remix, yeah. Or
I will still play that.
Yeah.
Anytime.
It's so good.
And then, I mean, what was interesting about that, especially just within our world, which tended to be these band people that ended up in electronic music, is that like a community actually formed, which was surprising. And that's something that I don't think gets talked about enough, is that there was a group of people from 2010 to 2013 or so that, yeah, like that era, that really like rallied behind our world. And I think that like, you know, you and Classics and the Knox and myself and a few other acts like really did kind of support each other and push through. And it was an example of a bunch of people finding, you know, some of us lived close to each other, but for the most part it was an internet related thing where we all dug each other's stuff and we were all doing kind of the same thing. And then all of a sudden there were agents that specialized in our world, and there were promoters that specialized in our world, and before long we were traveling half of the weekends of the year to play shows.
Yeah. Shout out to Adam Ogashwitz. There were a couple of other agents, obviously, like Latney at Windish, and there's like a couple other people that were like pretty instrumental in sort of like helping that scene. And it really felt like a scene, you know. I felt like we were a part of something, you know. I feel like it got a little bit lumped into new disco or whatever, you know. It kind of got called that, but it, you know, I don't think anybody in there was really trying to do that. It was just kind of, it was an emergent internet blog thing, and I don't know, it was cool. It was awesome.
Everybody I just listed comes from a background that's not a strictly dance music background.
Right. I mean,
and I think that's sort of that more than anything is what ties those acts together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Classics, like if you look at what Michael likes to listen to, it's like bizarre like 80s, you know, like instrumental, like Tangerine Dream, like things like, I mean, Tangerine Dream isn't that weird, but you know what I mean, like that kind of stuff. And but then you listen to their music and it kind of makes sense. Or like the Knox, I mean, totally hip hop. You know, I mean, Ben definitely produced like a lot of hip hop and like stuff like that. So it's, yeah, but we all kind of like coalesced in that one moment, and it was a fun ride, that's for sure.
It was an interesting time. I mean, to me, the thing that I'll remember more than anything else was that there was this weird period of time for a few years there where EDM was popping and all these brands wanted to get money into that world. And for whatever reason, like an economist needs to like figure this out and write a paper about it, because for some reason in those years, and this was before like EDM festivals became like this, you know, bloated bubble, but in every city there was like 2 or 3 weekly parties that all booked and somehow could afford to book international DJs to come and play. And so like, I remember talking to Adam all the time about like, okay, so we're going to go to Philly. Should we play this party or this party?
Yeah.
And then we're going to go to and like every city had like a few club nights that could afford to bring all of us somehow. And like we weren't really all that well known.
Yeah. No, it really wasn't.
Point, which was
so. One of the things that I always thought was really funny was like, so my wife Liz, or my father-in-law, like when he found out that I toured, or that I was actually like playing Philly, where they're from, and his reaction was like, well, what? Don't they have local DJs? Like, why is he flying across the country to play a show? It's like. I mean, that's just like a kind of a dumb example, but you know, like that, we weren't well known. Like it wasn't like it was just like the specific niche.
There's no good way to answer that question that isn't like sort of bragging either, because the answer is like they want to associate like their club night with you. Right.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Yeah, no, I got that all the time. It's like, and you're just DJing? Because I'd always been, you know, I'd been in bands and played live. You know, with Nightwave. So it's like, well, now you're just DJing? Okay. And you're like coming to Boston to DJ?
Yeah. I mean, when I switched to the band, I took a 70% price, fee cut. Like it's a different world. Yeah, it's crazy that they expect so much more from, you know, yeah, you know what I mean?
It was a pretty cool time for sure, that those few years, and having, like I said, I think having that community was interesting because I definitely never had that. And in the late 2000s, we felt really on an island because everybody was so into electro and the beginnings of like dubstep really popping off, and we were just like trying to write pop songs with electronic music backing, and that seemed novel at the time, which is funny, you know, considering where music is now. So it was very cool to have you and some of the other, you know, Poolside we didn't mention, but Poolside was kind of in the same, you know, you guys all kind of popped off a couple of years before me, and then me jumping in around 2012 or something like that. Yeah, I mean, it's a special time to look back on. And what's interesting is that we are still here having this conversation now, because there are also a lot of people from, you know, that era that aren't around anymore.
Right. Yeah. No, I actually feel quite fortunate for that. And you know, I've really done my best, at least on a personal level, I've really done my best to sort of, you know, no, it's not like I'm trying to change with the times or anything like that, but I definitely like try to kind of carve my own path and do things. And I feel like you've done a really good job of that too, of sort of, you know, it's like, I feel like that point was like we all kind of coalesced, and then we all kind of like, you know, just continued on and we kept doing our thing.
Yeah, I think it can be a good thing or a bad thing, right? Like if you're Kygo and Thomas Jack and you're like, this is what I am and I'm going to like hammer the shit out of that, that can either be a good thing or a bad thing. And like it can take you certain places, but like we were describing with our crew, I think all of us came from a fairly diverse music background, and none of us wanted to be like, oh, we make dance music and we're going to make dance music within the confines of like what dance music is supposed to be like. And because of that, we, you know, we're not playing like dance music festivals in Europe.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no,
but that's fine because I think it also gives us the chance to like progress and evolve without our fan base being like, what are you doing?
right. Like that just sort of reminds me of playing Ultra. Like it just felt weird, honestly. The show was fine, but I played there twice, but one with a band, and then one just as a DJ. And like even as a DJ, like it just, I don't know, like it seemed like people just wanted EDM bangers, and that's not what I'm here to do. You know what I mean? Like
I was there.
Yeah.
That day.
Yeah.
I played earlier that day. It was like Viceroy, me, Amtrak.
Right. Yeah. We were on that stupid
Oliver,
yacht. That ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, so
don't call that yacht.
No. Okay. No. I know.
Well, so at Ultra, in Miami, the green room is like a mega yacht, and you get on this yacht, and all of the different cabins are green rooms for all the DJs. So you like walk by Afrojack's room, and then like your little room is right there.
Yeah. No. I think it was sort of like, to me, it was a sign of like how ridiculous the EDM culture had gotten, and like how much money was involved for them to have like that level of sort of luxury as a green room. That's kind of what I meant by stupid, because it's like guys, this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
true.
Like every other festival you play, you get like a dingy trailer, and you know you should be happy with that. But like EDM was like living large, you know.
Sure. So funny.
But yeah. So how was your experience like playing Ultra? Like, did you feel that at all, or was it kind of like?
I played it twice. I love those situations. I've played Hard Fest.
Oh wow!
And a couple others, and I love those situations because I play like my mellowest sets at those festivals. Because I'm just kind of like, okay, the most aggressive song I'm going to play is going to be like the mellowest song that anyone's going to hear this whole day. So like, I'm going to try and be the after dinner mint no matter what. And I'm a pretty competitive person. And so it sort of feels like I'm about to like play a big game. And so I don't want to, angry is the wrong word, but like anytime I'm in that kind of situation, I'm like fired up to like I'm excited to piss off the people that want me to play bangers.
Right. Yeah.
Or whatever. And like, if I can clear the dance floor of those people, I get really happy. And then there's always a handful of people that are like, that was the thing I wasn't expecting that I needed to hear today, or something like that.
Right. It's actually like a really fantastic way to stand out in like a large group of sort of, really a lot of music that just sounds the same, to be honest.
I don't know if this is good advice or bad advice, but it really is the single piece of advice that I've given to like up and coming DJs more than anything else. They're always like, well, how do I deal with requests, and like, should I be playing to my audience more? And my answer is always like, if you truly think that you're like an open format DJ and you want to play in Vegas or do that, like, then like, yeah, your job is to be a good DJ. But if you're not doing that, you were booked because you have like a unique vibe, and you should do that no matter what, because if people want you to do something else, those aren't the people that you want to be your fans anyway.
Right.
And I always looked at it that way. It's like, if people don't like my set, well, then they're not going to like my music, and I have no desire to have them as a fan anyway, so who cares?
Right. Yeah. No, I feel the same way, and I kind of feel that way about a lot of things related to music. It's like really, I mean, I talk about this on the stream all the time. It's like, I'm just like really kind of thinking about what you're doing is like making sure that you're personally happy with it, and like standing behind the work that you do, despite of like anybody that might not get it or whatever. Like it has a way of sort of weeding out people that don't like what you do, and you bring together people that do, and that's kind of freeing and really liberating, you know.
So that's easy when you're in a band or when you're making music, or even if you get to curate your own shows. Like for me, doing my high seas shows, I feel like I've been really good at that, because like my fan base that comes to the boat parties, it's just very clear what we're all going for, and so it solidifies everything in a way that makes a lot of sense and is really gratifying. The weird thing about DJing is that, from a very pure perspective, the point of DJing is to please the crowd that's in front of you,
right.
regardless of what you want to do. Your job is to play the song that they don't even know that they want to hear yet. So like, it doesn't just mean that you want to play the song that they want to, I mean, whatever, you can get it.
Yeah.
But, so it's weird if you're an electronic musician and you're DJing, because the crux of what it means to be a DJ is in contrast to what you just described as far as the right way to be happy and fulfilled as an artist. Mm-hmm. And so you shouldn't have to give that piece of advice, but I think it is an important piece of advice to say, like, don't, you know, like, if you want to have an artist career and you want to make your own music and that's where this is going, don't play to the crowd.
Right.
Do you. Always do you.
It is true that the DJing, like, if we can separate the two, because like, I think we can separate DJing in let's say electronic performance, because I think they're two different things, right? Like they often get sort of categorized together. But I would say, I would agree with you that DJing is like, you definitely want to play to the crowd. You know, if it's a party environment, yeah, I mean, that's the point, right? I mean, you know, all of this is like a bit nuanced, right? But like with live performance, I mean, I think that's where you can really go in the other direction and be like, no, this is what I do. Either like it or you don't. And but I'm happy with it. This is who I am. This is, you know, what I represent, you know. So yeah. Okay, so circling back all of this, I feel like we didn't even get to Goldroom. Like, I mean, we got like to the beginning of like Goldroom. Sort of. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about Goldroom obviously, but like, I guess like, so you started DJing. You started like, did you start producing maybe some stuff on your own?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote and produced this stuff for Nightwaves that they didn't really like, so I finished it and consulted with people that I trust, and everyone was like, "Yeah, you should probably just do your own thing." So I started Goldroom and I released a 4-song EP, which was hosted on SoundCloud, but I gave a download away so that blogs would write about it. And that 4-song EP was kind of what really launched things. I had this belief even then that releasing a song at a time and then bundling them into an EP later is smarter than putting everything out all at once. So I started to do that pretty early, and I self-released for years, and I finally got a manager, and I finally got a booking agent who we shared, Adam, who you brought up. But yeah, like at that point, I really enjoyed writing with Kyle in Nightwaves, but I was really interested in what would happen if I just did everything myself. And I had always hated my voice, and I started Poolside really influenced me, because Philip, who was the singer of Poolside for the first 2 albums,
shout out Turbo Tito.
Philip, I love you. I love Turbo Tito. I love Philip's voice. It's cool, but it's fucking weird. Yeah. He has a really weird and unconventional voice that is not really all that great. And I was like, you know, if he can do it and they write good songs, like, I think I can do something like that too. And I started to realize maybe if I sang smaller phrases and really produced the shit out of them, I could make myself sound good enough that I wouldn't mind the way I sounded. And so instead of writing, you know, when I'm singer-songwriter vibes, I'm writing these long verses and complicated transitions and, you know, soaring choruses and all this. But I was like, if I'm writing a down-tempo disco song, I can write some little thing that's, you know, lost in a space inside this lifeline. What if it was more like just a little sing-songy thing that I could sing kind of mellowly and do it a whole bunch of times and just get one take that was good. I could probably use my own voice. And so I realized that I could do everything myself. And that was an incredibly liberating moment, because people, when I released that music, people actually liked it. And that sort of started to lead down the path. I didn't think that I would ever be collaborating with other people. I thought it was all just going to be me. And all that changed when I did a remix for Nicki and the Dove. Right.
Okay, but before we get there, I just wanted to point out one thing that I always thought was interesting is like the short phrase thing. the sort of repetitive phrase. Like, that's actually something that I think is really underappreciated in electronic music, because people is like, oh, it's so simple, but it's so effective. I mean, a lot of your music has like sort of those hooks, and I mean, yeah, there might be like a verse chorus structure, but like those little bits like really kind of, that's what a lot of people remember, and when it comes in, like everybody sings along, and it's like, and like that's one of the things I really like about electronic music, is that repetitive nature. You get sort of sucked into it, you know, you kind of want to just hear it again and again and again, you know.
That is the true genius of Daft Punk.
Right.
They've never written a phrase that was a bad phrase, and part of it's because they are not native English speakers,
mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of the lyrics that they write are like a little off, but
right. Like who could?
But still make so much
like
sense.
Who can make a song that's like that just repeats around the world for 40 million times, whatever? Like it's just like constant.
Yeah, totally.
Like good luck with that, you know. That's hard.
And yeah, so
Nicky and the Dove, yeah,
it opened things up, because all of a sudden, like, I had been sort of, I love Bob Dylan, like I was writing all this really wordy singer-songwriter stuff, and it all of a sudden opened up this world to be like, oh, I can just write like 2 lyrics and that's the whole song. Cool.
Yeah.
You know, like, and so I thought that was the path I was going to go down, and then I did this remix for Nicky and the Dove that did very well, and that was kind of the moment that got me those gigs in Canada. Oh, actually, that's not true. I played the Nicky and the Dove remix for the first time there.
Nice.
Anyway, it was the first time that my production had been over female vocals. And my manager, Jerry, at the time was like, your production works really well over good female vocals. You should write with some female vocalists. And I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, little did I know that would sort of transform my life into 10 years of sitting in rooms with not just females, but sitting in rooms with other writers and, you know, going down the co-write path, which has been great.
Yeah. No, that's actually one of my favorite things about my own project, is just like this kind of endless list of people you can collaborate with. Like I find it really fun. Like I guess after being in bands for a really long time, and like you know, working with like one single vocalist, for example, like, I mean, when you get in a groove, it's great, but like sometimes it's just really fun to change it up and try somebody completely different, and be really surprised by that. You know, I've had a lot of really 100%. Good results from that.
It's so great, and I think, you know, we obviously could talk about remixes all day, but that's one of the reasons why, coming from a remix culture, and I think I saw Ryland earlier in the chat just mention how many bootleg remixes there were, you know, during the blog days. And I think, like, you know, I'm sure you were at the time, like, banging out a lot more, just a lot of remixes. And I certainly was too, even, you know, a lot that I never did anything with. But spending all of that time working with somebody else's vocals and somebody else's writing, I think prepares you so well for then finding a way to make your own art within those confines, which is really cool and exciting. I mean, it's like, this is what blog culture gave to the world. You know, that's the book I really want to see written at some point, is like how bootleg remixes and blog culture and blog house influenced all forms of popular music.
Yeah.
Because I think that bootleg remixes are like a huge portion of that story.
Yeah, I mean, and
one that won't really get told. A lot of those remixes aren't even available
Right,
anymore.
like you can't get them on Spotify or any of that stuff, because like they're sort of stuck in this weird limbo, legally speaking, because they're not technically supposed to exist, right? Or they weren't allowed to exist, but they sort of emerged anyway. Right. I kind of love that about the internet. I think of remixes, at least for me, even though like pretty much most of the things I did were official. I did a couple bootleg things like along the way, but like to me, it was like the perfect practice for everything else. You know, like that's where I really learned how to, you know, like record and write music. Like it was doing that over and over again. It was like if you think about like with remixing, I mean, you're most of the time working with like, you know, it's the band's best song, you know, kind of, or it's their single. It's the one they think is the poppiest. So, and they're asking you to reinterpret that. So you're working with the best material, and all you have to do is sort of just reinterpret it, and you learn so much along the way, because you really get to sort of dig into like how it was made, what tools did they use. I mean, like just for me, it was such a trip. Like over the years, just listening to all these. Sometimes I'll just sit there and listen to stems over and over again, and just like figure out how they did this or how they did that. That's one of my favorite things about it.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the funny things is too, you can learn a lot from getting all those stems, even though like, you know, and I'll always listen to them. I like, even now, I always have a fun time going through stems. Even if like 90% of the time I'm just throwing everything out except the vocal. But yeah, you can learn so much from that. It's also, you know, it's been fun having friends that are like vintage stem hoarders.
Yeah.
Like Vaughn Oliver is that way, but my friend Blake, who goes by Luxury, is that way too. And he's just got like terabytes of like classic rock stems, and it's so fun, like learning. You can learn so much from sessions and projects like that. Like
the very first,
but yeah, that's sort of
like the first remix I did. This is like pre RAC. I remixed Block Party, and like they sent me. They didn't even send me stems. They literally sent me like the Pro Tools file. So I had kick in, kick out, like literally every mic of that drum set. Like to me, which is like an iconic drum sound. So like me trying to like figure out how he like, I think it was Paul Epsworth did it, or like actually at this point legendary producer, but you know, like how he recorded that band, and it was, I don't know, it's like I find it fascinating.
I was just talking with a friend of mine about how we went to like a radio festival in like halfway to Las Vegas, and we went like 311 headlined. But the reason why we went was that Block Party played at like 1 PM. Nice. This was like just after Silent Alarm came out. It was so good, which is such a trip then, because like our mutual friend Simon White was managing them at the time, and then later managed me. Yeah. Yeah, it's always fun, like kind of meeting these people after the fact. But yeah. Totally. Yeah, he's always been pretty early on all that stuff. Okay, so I guess like it's hard to condense all this stuff into a short amount of time, but like, you know, I guess like kind of jumping ahead to Goldroom, maybe like I am kind of curious to hear about like your decision to like get into like a major label deal. You know, like what, like, you know, I guess like tell us how you got from like blogs to playing shows to like a major label deal, because that's like a pretty big jump, right? Like that's what a lot of people think of as like the big break, right? So I was playing shows and even playing festivals before I signed a record deal, and I had decided somewhere early on in the process with Goldroom that I wasn't going to sign a record deal until I knew that I wanted to put my first album out, and that I was going to put out as many singles and build myself up as much as I could before signing with a label. And I wanted to have a good chunk of an album done at that point. So I signed with Simon to manage me in like middle of 2014. So Goldroom had been around for a few years, and I toured around. You know, we were friends at that point already, and I had started to play a couple festivals and had definitely like been to Australia and been to South America and been to Asia. So like things were happening, but I didn't have a publishing deal. I didn't have a record deal or anything like that. And so like we like did that thing where you take the demos and you send them around, and then you go and you meet people. And I took a trip to New York. I remember feeling really cool because I got to take a trip to New York where I didn't play a show, and the purpose of the trip to New York was to meet with record labels.
Business trip.
Yes, and like we went to Spotify, and we went to a couple other places, and then we went to a bunch of record labels, and I met with majors and I met with indies, and it became pretty apparent to me pretty early on that I didn't want to sign with a major. And we got a couple of offers from majors and a couple of offers from larger independent labels. And it just became pretty apparent to me pretty quickly that I didn't want to sign with a major because they were all demanding that they get a piece of all of my revenue, including my live shows.
And that was 360 deal, by the way, is what we're talking about. Yeah.
So money from everything, merch, from every income source. And like, as I sort of just mentioned, I was touring more than half of the weekends of the year, and I was traveling around the world. Like, this is how I was making my living. It was going to significantly change. It's funny how most people think of a record deal as being like a payday that's going to like change your life for the better. I legitimately was worried that if I signed with a major, it would hurt my ability
right.
to like continue living. So I signed with Downtown Records, which had put out Mike Snow's records, and I really loved the way that Mike Snow presented themselves, and I thought that they did really great stuff. And Santi Gold had been on that label.
I think Penguin Prison, as well.
Penguin Prison put out his first record on that label. So, they seemed great. And they were great. So I put out an EP with them and a single. And then the major label thing happened because they did a deal with Interscope for my record. So they did an upstream deal where they decided to collaborate on my record with Interscope. So even though I had told myself that I didn't want to be on a major, this opportunity came up to put my record out through Interscope while still attached to my indie label. And so I felt like it was the best of both worlds. I was a little worried that it was the first time they were going to be collaborating in this new deal. And in some ways, I think it was probably a good thing. And in other ways, I think it hurt us. And that one album working in that specific situation was enough. And so when we started putting music out after that, that relationship went away, and I just kept releasing music with Downtown. So we definitely, we got the major label experience while not getting locked into that system. I never had I personally never had a deal with Universal.
Right.
So it was...
You sort of benefited from it to a certain extent, but maybe that halfway thing, you didn't get to experience the full thing.
There were some good things and some bad things. Like, for instance, in 2016, the only way to get blogged about, and blogs did still matter in 2016, was if you submitted... I guess it was Submit Hub. There was some issue with Universal at that point where you couldn't send SoundCloud streams out in advance. Or SoundCloud streams were not allowed to be in Universal press releases. And so therefore blogs just wouldn't write about music that came out on Universal. And meanwhile, my entire career was built on blogs. And so there were all these bloggers ready to write about Silhouette or something like that, and they couldn't. So we were fighting with Universal constantly on stuff like that, and we received very little press for the record because of that weird loophole that was happening at the time.
They really went to war against SoundCloud. Basically, this just kind of shows like what these companies actually care about, which is like it's their agenda first and their artist second. Because like I sort of experienced that as well, where like I would upload stuff to SoundCloud, even though they told me not to. I would just do it anyway, which didn't make me very popular. But I had 5 million followers or whatever, so I'm not going to give this up just because of your stupid like rule that you came up with, just because you don't like SoundCloud. So like they were really trying to they were basically trying to pressure SoundCloud into like do some kind of deal with them, whatever. And also, funny enough, that's when the Spotify stuff really started to take off, because SoundCloud just wouldn't play ball. So, it's kind of interesting in hindsight, like.
Yeah, and that's not to say, like, I don't think that Universal, I mean, maybe I think Universal was being dumb in that moment to have that policy.
Right.
I think that that's a mistake. But it's not like, I don't look back at that being like, Interscope sucked.
Right.
Like
It was
that.
just like an example, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, your question kind of was like, how did that whole process work? I don't know. I just, like I said, the opportunity was presented, and so we went with it. And then I'm actually pretty happy that the way that it ended up working out is that the relationship between Downtown and Interscope ended, and so I was able to just keep releasing music with Downtown after that.
Yeah.
So I put out another EP with them, and then another album with them, all of which went great. So it's been nice sort of having a career that I released music independently for a few years. I released music with a large indie. I released music through Interscope. Then I released music through a large indie. And now the last step here is starting to release music through our own label.
Right. Yeah, nice segue. But yeah, I mean, this has sort of been, I guess maybe, we're kind of like hour and a half talking about this, but it's basically like, that's what it takes to kind of get to this point where we're like, we've done every kind of deal in between the both of us. I mean, we've done literally every kind of deal. We've worked with like every single label, on the remix side at the very least. And we've sort of seen how this stuff, gets done basically.
I mean, I'll say, like, I think one of the things that I keep wanting to say, but I think that it sort of gives the wrong impression, is, we want to, and this goes all the way back to our discussion about remixes at the beginning, is that, we want to have more ownership in the stuff, in the art that we make in the long term. And we want to be able to maintain that ownership for the rest of our lives. And, the reason why I'm like, I hesitate to say how important that is to us is because there is definitely a narrative that goes on where, like, you'll just see somebody trumpeting on Twitter, like, never sign your masters away, never sign a publishing deal. Right. Record labels are just there to screw you. Publishing companies are just there to screw you. And that's just not true.
Right.
There are plenty of situations where artists don't have the resources, whether that's money or otherwise, to promote their own music, and they need a partner, and the partner needs to be compensated to do that. And there are lots of times where there's a reason why record companies still exist. Right. And, I think I'm proud of what we're doing. I also, I wouldn't advise my 2013 version of Josh not to sign a record deal and just stay independent forever. Like, that wouldn't have been the right move either. But I do think that, certainly the further along you go and the bigger your catalog grows, the more that you realize the value of keeping ownership in your career and in your catalog.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. I think, every artist's career is going to be different, right? And so that's why, when people ask for advice on this stuff, it's like where to even begin, because it's so specific. It really depends on where you are. And yeah, so I'm like the major label decision in my case was there was a lot of negatives, but I mean, it would be pretty ridiculous for me to say that it wasn't overall a positive experience, because that put me on the map in a very meaningful way and allowed me to kind of do all the other stuff that I kind of take for granted now. So it was just a step in the path of becoming fully independent at some point.
And look, from a very specific thing, Interscope was willing to pay a lot of money to promote you on that record. Yeah. And that was money that you probably didn't have access to in any other way. And on top of that, they were also willing to spend that money and basically give you a loan to do all of that, and you never have to pay it back.
Right. No, they took risks for sure.
You only pay it back if they make their money back. And so in return, it makes sense that you guys should be splitting the profits and that they should probably control that piece of music for some amount of time.
Right.
So it always bothers me when you see this thing where it's like, I think that this really came up during the like Taylor Swift chronicles where she was trying to buy back her own masters and wasn't able to, or something like that.
Right.
But when people were like, wait, what? Artists don't have control of their own music? It's like, if somebody was willing to spend millions of dollars to promote the music, and they're not just going to do that out of the goodness of their hearts. Like there has to be a reasonable give and take.
Okay, so like absolutely, like the Taylor Swift thing, like I definitely don't mean to diminish her talent or anything like that, but like she didn't become as well known as she is like on that alone, right? Like there's a huge machine behind her that spent a lot of money to put her in that position.
She was not a SoundCloud,
right? So clearly benefit. I mean, obviously that situation's like kind of nuanced. There's a lot of stuff that I don't even know, so I don't want to like just make a blanket statement about it. But like it makes sense why labels labels take risks. Basically, like I think back on my first album. I mean, my first album was probably really paid for by Will.i.am, or Eminem, or like somebody else at Interscope, because like I mean, maybe my album will eventually pay itself back. I mean, because Interscope spent a ton of money on it, and they probably aren't recouped yet. Like all these years later. I mean, I'm sure they will, but like it makes sense that like a lot of people, it's a compelling argument to make, they're an easy target, I guess is what I'm saying,
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that is definitely true that many record deals, especially at that level, they buy those masters from you, and you don't get them back.
That's how I thought about it. Yeah,
and so that's, I think, something that a lot of the like music public is starting to understand, that happens, and that feels weird, I guess. I don't know. I mean, everyone has to make that trade-off at some point, and I think everything that you hope for is that you can get to the point in your career where you can start to like take some of that control back, because one of the issues is that whoever controls that intellectual property, they're the ones that see the benefits decades and decades down the line.
Right. The copyright's last 70 plus years or something. I mean, Disney keeps like pushing it back, so I don't even know at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and master, and of course master recordings last as forever, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, in perpetuity.
It's like it's a physical object. I'm running out of light, aren't I?
Oh no, it's all right. Yeah,
I like it. You've seen the whole. Here's the sunset.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing, because I think that there is this misconception that it's like record labels are there to fuck you or something like
right.
that, and that major labels always screw artists, or that the ultimate path to success, or the best path to success, is through complete independence. And I don't agree with that. I think that can happen, but I think that in most cases, finding a partner to release your music with that has resources and knowledge and money that you don't have is a smart thing. You just need to be smart about who you work with and when and why and how. I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why we started Minerva, right? Is so that we could hopefully be the kind of label that can help artists go from point A to point B and get them to the point where they're not feeling like they're getting screwed by record labels, and they're setting themselves up to have a career that can last, a decade or whatever.
Right. And also just, for me personally, like it's nice to sort of think about somebody else's career and see how, like, with the benefit of maybe, a decent amount of experience. So, I feel like there were things that, had I known back then, maybe I would have done differently. Or if I had, I'd certainly had a manager to help me and all that, but it's interesting to be in that position now and be able to sort of help people along that way. Yeah. So, I guess, like, I think we should maybe wrap it up, but, I'm kind of wondering if there's, like, anything more, maybe more recently with Goldroom that you want to talk about. I guess we kind of already talked about it, like, with Minerva, but, like, I guess maybe as a final question, like, how do you, what do you think is, like, sort of the role of the album in, in like, or are you thinking more, you kind of alluded to this a little bit, like with singles and stuff like that. My cat's on the piano.
I knew it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask. I know that sound. I have cats that go on my whirly, and it makes that exact same noise.
So, like, I guess, like, what do you think about, maybe, like, from the context of your own career, like, how do you see this progressing? Do you think you want to do more? Okay, like, maybe just for more context, in the context of, like, the guy from Spotify saying that artists can't release albums every 4 years. Like, what are your thoughts about, like, Goldroom in that context? Like, do you feel strongly against it, or do you want to do singles, or like?
I've never been an artist that felt like if I have I only care about what my body of work looks like once it's done, meaning, like, looking backwards. Mm-hmm. So if I release 12 singles and then I bundle them into a record, as long as that's the record that I want, as long as that's a complete thought, that's what I care about the most. The method of getting from point A to point B doesn't matter to me.
Right.
So even in 2013, I knew that I wanted to make this Embrace EP. I knew I wanted it to be 6 songs, but I was like, okay, I'm going to put one song out every 2 months and then bundle them into this EP. So I still believe very much as an artist in creating complete thoughts. And both of my two full-length albums are complete thoughts, and I still want to work under those confines. Not under the confines of albums. I don't believe that, like, a complete thought necessarily is an album. I think a complete thought can be 3 songs or 8 songs or 16 songs or whatever. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, it happens to be that, I tend to my thoughts tend to take 2 years to put together. and when that thought finishes, it tends to be an album, the length of an album. I still really want to do that. I think that Daniel Ek is like, he's like Elon Musk in a way where, like, he's not a creator. They are going to speak about the world in different terms than people can understand. And while that was an incredibly insensitive remark, I don't think he was thinking. He probably regrets.
Yeah. I didn't take it really that personally. It seemed like just like kind of an offhand comment that got, like, nitpicked to death. And it's an easy headline, right?
100%. And, he's also not wrong. Mm-hmm. We live in a world where an artist, if you don't, unless you're Tame Impala or Kanye West, like, you can't.
Frank Ocean.
or Frank Ocean, right. Or Beyonce, like, you can't disappear for 4 years and then put an album on a platter and have everyone care. Mm-hmm. And so I'm fine with that. Like, I write 25 or 30 songs a year, and if that means I get to put out more singles, like Guess I'm Jaded, which is a song that a few years ago I think probably never would have come out, right, because it didn't fit within an album context, but here I get to put a single out that's kind of a bridge. That's exciting. to me. So I'm totally down with that. I also like COVID has provided a good moment for me to like readjust and think differently about, I've been sort of forced to take a step back from the writing process. So I've got to think a little bit more about what I'm doing for the next record. And so I'm really excited to like jump on the treadmill and get running on it. I have a pretty set pattern of how I work on records now. Something comes out and then I spend the next 3 to 6 months just sort of like listening to music and thinking about what I'm going to do next. Not even writing, like no writing.
Yeah.
And then once I have once I sort of have an idea, not concept album, I don't mean it in that way, but once I have a concept of what I think the aesthetic and themes are going to be, I get really excited about it. I get very obsessive about it. And then I like attack the music for the next 6 to 9 months. And then this record gets done and then we figure out how to put it out. And so like, I'm at the point now where I know what the next record is about and I can picture it in my head. Now I just have to make it. It's my favorite. It's like my favorite.
That's the exciting time, right? Yeah. I'm kind of the same way, and I like I like what you said, like complete thoughts. I like that idea because like that can take any form, right? And like that's how I think about it. In my case, I do tend to do more album stuff. That to me is like my preferred approach. But like I the intentionality is really what I'm looking for. It's not. Like it's not the format.
We're also lucky that we also get to use remixes as a way to work outside of the album format and to push ourselves in different directions and release music to the public that maybe a band might not be able to do. So it's cool that outside of the album world we can use remixes to like explore some of those different channels.
So I'm just copying a link to the chat so you guys can check out. Give Goldroom a follow on Spotify and check out the new remix as well. Josh, this has been so awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. It's been so much fun.
This was really fun.
This is the first one I've done, so I wasn't sure like how long to go or whatever, but I feel like we got into a lot of like really interesting stuff that, to be honest, we don't normally get to talk about. So,
this was good, and it's always fun like figuring out how deep down the like industry rabbit hole you can go and like still feel comfortable. And I mean, this was like if you ever want to continue, I'm always down to chat.
So thanks, Steve.
I mean, we sort of do this.
I know.
We have our Minerva calls, and our calls tend to end up being about this kind of stuff. So
you're getting some lint rollers and some golden lint rollers in the chat. Just
hell yeah.
But
I also have 2 cats. My 2 cats are black. Full like hardcore black cats. But
so if you I guess if you wear black, it's not a big deal. But my cats, it's everywhere constantly. So it's become a running joke on the channel. But so
I have the big lint rollers and I have the little travel one that comes on the road with me too, because that cat hair finds its way everywhere.
I have like. Remember traveling? I used to have. I always had one in my bag.
Totally. Traveling. It will happen one day. I'm actually feeling. I was talking to my agent the other day about this, but I am feeling more confident than I have in a long time that I think that I'll be playing boat parties next summer.
I think like next summer seems feasible. It seems pretty far away, but it is.
There might still be masks involved. There might still be some like social distancing or like reduced capacity, but I think outdoor shows next summer seem pretty likely.
Outdoor shows seems a lot more likely than the indoor confined. The independent San Francisco. That's gonna be tough.
How crazy is this? We didn't talk about COVID at all in this chat. That's really nice.
It is nice.
2 musicians. We didn't have to talk.
We didn't have to go through that whole thing. I mean, I guess we've talked about it like ad nauseum at this point, but awesome. Well, again, I feel like this is a successful first podcast. I'll call it a podcast, sure. Thank you.
I have to. Yeah, I guess you have to have me back actually once.
Yeah. No, I will.
I don't. I have to. I get to be more than just a.
No. I would love to. And then we can get into some, other topics and all that stuff, because there's sort of like an endless things we can kind of get into. It was cool to get into Bloghouse. It's been a while since I thought about that.
Agreed. Yeah, actually, if you should. I mean, this might. I wonder. Never mind. I have just a really, really good Bloghouse playlist.
Oh, sick. Well,
it's called Disco Dust. If you search Spotify and look for Disco Dust,
I posted your account, so if it's under your account, it should show up.
I think it's there. It's public. Yeah, people can find it there. It's pretty epic.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me on. This was really fun, and hope maybe next time we can talk more about like some of the dreams for the future of the music business that we have, because there's definitely some sort of tech-related things that I think would be fun to
absolutely
dive into.
Yeah, this was more of reminiscing a little bit, but yeah. It's funny because like we actually don't talk about like the past that much, because I think we're two kind of forward-looking people. We're always like thinking about like what are we doing next. So like that's kind of the focus. So it's like kind of interesting to talk about some other stuff. But
yeah, I mean that was a special time.
Yeah.
Somehow we made it through.
We're on the other side. Awesome. Well.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go before I disappear.
Thank you so much, Josh.
Before I fade into the black.
I'm obviously gonna stay in the chat and play some music for you guys. But thank you so much, Josh. Have a good one.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for everyone. Also, I've been reading the comments.
All right.
Okay.
See ya. Bye.